My name is Su Qing. I'm 38 years old, and for more than a decade, people trusted me to protect fortunes worth millions. I was a senior financial risk consultant. Predicting scams, spotting hidden dangers, and keeping other people's money safe was literally my job. Ironically, I never saw the biggest risk coming. It wasn't a market crash. It wasn't a bad investment. It was one man. By the time I realized who he really was, every dollar I'd spent my entire life earning was gone, including the $200,000 my parents had given me before I got married, money that had always belonged to me alone. I lost my savings. I lost my marriage. I lost my career. And worst of all, I lost the version of myself that believed intelligence could protect you from betrayal. This is the story of how the woman everyone called the risk expert became the biggest financial mistake of her own life. We just returned from our Bali honeymoon when I set my leather handbag down on the entry cabinet after unlocking the front door. I'd barely taken off my shoes when Zhao Shulian wandered over from the living room, her eyes locked firmly on the zipper pocket of my purse where the dowry bank card sat. Her body language told me everything before she even opened her mouth. She'd been waiting for this chance the entire day, already rehearsed every line and movement to take possession of my money without my full consent. She didn't wait for me to sit or catch my breath. She stepped right up, reached into my bag without asking permission, and fished the bank card out smoothly, like she'd practiced this exact move dozens of times at other relatives' homes. My gaze instantly shot to Zhou Yang, who'd slumped into the single-seat sofa, shoulders hunched, eyes darting anywhere but my face. I read the silent plea forming on his lips the second our glances crossed. Don't argue with her. Don't make me choose between you and my mother. That quiet surrender split a cold crack through every soft expectation I'd held for our marriage up to this point. I'd spent months planning a shared down payment fund for our future marital residence, counting on mutual respect between us. But in this split second, I realized Zhou Yang would always prioritize avoiding a fight over protecting my legal rights. His core motive was cowardice forged by decades of maternal control. He'd never learned to set boundaries with Zhao Shulian, and he expected me to absorb all grievances to keep his family atmosphere peaceful. I suppressed the sharp rage burning in my chest and curved a docile, harmless smile across my face, my tone soft enough to sound fully compliant. It's fine, Mom. If you think keeping it safe is better, I'll leave it with you temporarily. Zhao Shulian's face bloomed with undisguised triumph, patting my wrist hard to signal her absolute control over my assets before tucking the card deep into her coat pocket. The second she turned and walked out the door to run errands, my fake smile faded completely. I didn't waste time debating or venting to Zhou Yang. I grabbed my keys and headed straight for the nearest industrial and commercial bank branch. No explanation offered as I walked out. Zhou chased me to the building doorway, calling out desperate pleas for me to stop, but I didn't slow my pace. Inside the bank lobby, I pulled out my ID and requested full card loss reporting plus immediate reissuance. The system displayed the exact balance, 2,008 yuan and 32 cents, the tiny leftover change being the small deposit I'd made to activate the card weeks prior. The clerk double-checked my identity paperwork before locking the old card's transaction permissions permanently and printing a brand new card with a brand new secure password for me. I held the fresh bank slip in my palm on the walk back home, my mind mapping out every contingency step I'd need to deploy if Zhao Shulian attempted retaliation. No impulsive outbursts, only legal, structural countermeasures to lock down my property. I arrived home to find Zhou pacing the living room floor, his anxiety spiking because he tried calling me 15 times with zero response. He rushed over to pull my arm the second I stepped through the threshold, begging me to calm down and promising he'd talk his mother into returning the card in a few days. I dodged his grasp and walked straight to the bedroom without a single extra word, already mentally cataloging every potential retaliation Zhao Shulian would launch once she discovered the card was voided. I didn't sleep restlessly that night, not out of sadness, but from calculating all the ways her family would attempt to pressure me in the coming days and drafting clear counter-strategies for each possible conflict scenario. The next morning, I sat through a full 2-hour company meeting with my work phone set to silent mode. When I picked up the device after wrapping up client reports, the screen showed 86 missed calls, all originating from Zhao Shulian's contact number. I could reconstruct her entire emotional breakdown timeline without needing to speak to her. Early morning trip to the ATM, inserting the card, entering Zhou's birthday as the guest password 3 times, watching the machine lock and swallow the plastic card, then spiraling into unhinged fury when she realized the 2 million fund pool she'd already allocated for her younger son's wedding down payment was completely inaccessible. I sipped my office coffee slowly before dialing her number back, fully prepared to dismantle her manufactured outrage with factual logic. The call connected on the first ring, her shrill screaming blasting through the receiver before I could utter a greeting. Su Qing, you heartless girl. What trick did you pull on my bank card? I kept my tone flat and unflustered, cutting through her hysteria with 2 unarguable facts. First, that card is mine, registered under my legal identity. All funds are my premarital personal assets. Second, I submitted a full loss report this morning, so the old card is permanently invalid now. I hung up instantly before she could launch another round of verbal abuse, then drag her contact straight into my phone blacklist, erasing her ability to bombard me with nonstop harassment. Less than 30 minutes passed before loud, violent doorbell ringing echoed through our apartment entryway. I glanced through the peephole to spot Zhao Shulian standing on the landing, red-faced and trembling, my father-in-law trailing behind her with a helpless, defeated expression. I ignored the chaotic banging and screaming for 20 full minutes, flipping through industry analysis books on the sofa while the noise persisted. Joe only emerged from his home office after finishing his remote work meeting, and his face paled the second he saw his mother's enraged state outside the door. He unlocked the entry door, and Zhao stormed inside immediately, pointing her finger within inches of my face and unleashing a string of vicious accusations, claiming all my possessions automatically belonged to the Zhou household after marriage. I closed the book and folded my hands in my lap, responding without a single elevated tone, breaking down her warped patriarch logic piece by piece. Marriage does not legally transfer my premarital assets to your family. You took my card without my consent, a clear violation of my personal property rights, and now you're throwing a public tantrum over the consequences of your own unauthorized action. My calm, factual rebuttal only enraged her further. She dropped onto the tile floor and began slapping her thighs, wailing at the top of her lungs to draw the attention of every neighboring household on our floor, performing a self-victimization act designed to paint me as an ungrateful, cruel daughter-in-law. Zhou's instinctive reaction to his mother's public meltdown was the same cowardly compromise he'd shown the day she stole my card. He pulled me into the private bedroom and begged me to hand over the new card and password to avoid neighborhood gossip ruining his family's reputation. This moment unlocked the first major inner emotional shift for me. I'd once held a faint hope that Zhou would eventually stand firm on my behalf, but his consistent choice to prioritize his mother's fleeting mood over my legal security erased that fragile hope entirely. I explained to him plainly that surrendering access to the dowry would create an irreversible precedent. Once I yielded this time, his family would continuously target my income and assets for every future demand they concocted. I issued a clear ultimatum. If his mother refused to leave voluntarily, I would dial local police to report illegal trespassing and public disturbance. Zhou hesitated for nearly 10 minutes before walking back out to convince Zhao Xulian to depart with my father-in-law. Once they left the premises, he retreated to the guest bedroom and refused to speak to me, initiating a cold, silent boycott as a form of emotional retaliation. I accepted this separation without distress, carrying on my regular work, fitness, and reading schedule without altering any part of my daily routine, refusing to let his passive-aggressive punishment disrupt my life rhythm. Over the next 3 days, every aunt, uncle, and cousin from Zhou's maternal side flooded my phone with moral blackmail calls, all reciting identical talking points crafted by Zhao to pressure me into releasing the dowry funds. I followed a uniform process for every unfamiliar relative's call, listened to their scripted lecture for 10 seconds, state my clear asset boundary, then end the call and block their contact permanently. I thought the cycle of family harassment would remain limited to remote phone harassment until an unexpected call broke through my blocked number filter 4 days later. The caller identified herself as Zhou Bin's fiancé, Li, her tone sharp and entitled before I even finished greeting her. Andy told me your $2 million dowry is reserved for our wedding down payment. You've been withholding the money and delaying our marriage plans. My blood ran cold as I processed this critical new truth. Zhao had merely planned to hold on to my money for temporary safekeeping. She'd pre-allocated the entire $2 million pool to fund her younger son's real estate purchase and had discussed this plan openly with Li without ever consulting me first. This revelation marked the second major plot reversal. The card theft was never a spontaneous, impulsive grab. It was a premeditated long-term scheme Zhao had plotted for weeks before our honeymoon even concluded. I activated my phone's call recording function without Li noticing, holding the speaker mode so Zhou, who'd wandered into the kitchen mid-conversation, could hear every word of her unfiltered demand. His face drained of all color as the reality of his mother's hidden plan sunk in. All his excuses about her, only wanting to keep my money safe, collapsed in an instant. After Li finished ranting and hung up, Zhou stumbled over to me, stammering through messy apologies, admitting he'd never suspected his mother had fully intended to seize the dowry for his brother's benefit all along. I didn't accept his rushed remorse outright, instead telling him I'd agreed to a formal family meeting where all core parties would attend, so we could lay every hidden scheme out on the table with objective third-party relatives present to witness the full truth. The scheduled Saturday family gathering arrived, with Zhao Xulian, my father-in-law, Zhou Bin, and Li all seated around our living room coffee table, plus 2 neutral elder uncles I'd invited to serve as unbiased witnesses. Zhao opened the conversation with the same self-righteous argument about elder sisters-in-law bearing an obligation to fund younger male relatives' housing. Before I responded, I pulled a printed official property purchase contract from my bag and laid it flat on the table surface for every attendee to read. I explained I'd already put down a 100,000 yuan non-refundable deposit on a residential unit using a small portion of the dowry fund, with the remaining 1.9 million required for the closing payment the following Wednesday. If the full dowry became inaccessible, I would forfeit the deposit entirely and lose our planned marital residence permanently. Zhao's confident, confrontational demeanor crumbled the second she processed the contract's legal terms. She'd not only risk stealing my personal funds, but her scheme would directly cost the Zhou family 100,000 yuan in irrecoverable losses if carried through to completion. Zhou Bin and Li's faces also turned ashen, realizing their promised wedding housing fund had an unbreakable legal string attached that Zhao had deliberately concealed from them. Zhao attempted to claim the contract was a fabricated lie to manipulate the group, so I shared the sales manager's direct phone number for all relatives to verify the document's authenticity themselves. She left the house immediately after the meeting ended, convinced she could rush to the real estate sales office the next morning to create a public scene and force the sales team to void my deposit agreement. I spent that night organizing digital backup of all my legal documents, bank transfer records, and call audio recordings stored across 3 separate cloud drives, preparing for her guaranteed public disruption the following day. Every choice I had made up to this point, card loss reporting, evidence collection, neutral witness recruitment, stemmed from a single core motive. I would never surrender my financial autonomy or allow anyone to exploit my life's hard work through outdated patriarchal family coercion. I didn't seek violent fights or permanent estrangement as my primary goal. I only intended to establish uncrossable legal and emotional boundaries that every member of Zhou's household would be forced to respect moving forward. But I already understood, based on Zhao's consistent pattern of reckless retaliation, she would escalate her harassment to a public venue, which would hand me irrefutable third-party witness evidence to shut down all their future asset demands for good. I left the real estate agency's front desk number with the 2 neutral elder uncles after the family meeting ended, laying out exactly what Zhao Xuelian would do next and how everyone should respond once her public disturbance unfolded. I knew her psychology backward and forward. Her entire identity rested on controlling the family's money flow, and when her premeditated 2 million dowry grab fell apart, her only coping mechanism was to stage a humiliating public scene to pressure me into backing down. She couldn't stand the idea that a daughter-in-law's personal assets were out of her reach, and she'd drag my housing purchase into ruin just to save her own sense of power. Zhou lingered behind after all the relatives filed out, his hands twisted tight together, eyes swimming with guilt and quiet fear. His motive wasn't malice, just lifelong learned helplessness. From childhood, every time he disagreed with his mother, she'd shut down his meals, refuse to speak to him for weeks, or badmouth him to every extended family member until he caved. He'd grown conditioned to pick compromise over confrontation, even when compromise meant trampling my legal rights. I talked to Mom last night, he said, voice thin, like he expected me to snap at him instantly. I told her she had no right to take your card without asking that the dowry is fully yours before marriage. She wouldn't listen. Said I'm picking a stranger over my own blood. Said if I keep defending you, she'll cut me out of all family inheritance. I didn't snap or shut him out. I'd spent years in financial consulting reading human behavioral patterns, and I could parse exactly where his conflict originated. He loved me, but he was terrified of being disowned by the only parent he'd ever known. That fear didn't excuse his inaction, but it let me separate his passive compliance from intentional harm. I didn't ask you to cut her off entirely, I told him flat, scrolling through my phone to pull up the real estate deposit contract photo again. I just need you to stop enabling her schemes. If she marches into the sales office tomorrow to throw a fit, you can't stand there silent and let her slander me to staff and strangers. Your silence counts as taking her side. He nodded, but his feet shuffled, avoiding steady eye contact. I already knew he wouldn't step up when the moment came. His childhood conditioning ran too deep, and that knowledge settled a cold, clear resolve in my chest. I could no longer rely on him to shield my interests. All my protection would have to come from my own preparation and legal evidence. The next morning, I arrived at the real estate agency an hour early, coordinated with the sales manager to activate full lobby camera recording, and handed over printed copies of my ID, dowry bank records, and deposit contract to the front desk staff. I told them exactly what Zhao Xuelian planned to do, instructed every employee to record every word she spoke, and said I'd call police the second she blocked customer traffic or verbally harassed me. The manager promised full cooperation. He'd seen dozens of family asset disputes before, and he had zero tolerance for public disruption hurting their store's reputation. I'd barely finished signing a supplementary purchase agreement when the glass front doors slammed open. Zhao Xuelian stormed in, Zhou Bin and Lili trailing 2 steps behind her like loyal followers, Zhou lagging far at the back, shoulders hunched, already shrinking away from the incoming conflict just as I predicted. Zhao didn't pause to greet anyone. She marched straight to my table, planted both palms flat on the counter, and raised her voice loud enough for every client browsing floor plans to turn and stare. Everyone listen up. This woman stole my family's money, refuses to give my youngest son money for a wedding house, hid her bank card behind our backs to cheat us all. Lili chimed in right on cue, rehearsed lines rolling off her tongue without hesitation. We were supposed to get a wedding apartment with that 2 million dowry. She's hoarding cash just to spite our marriage. I didn't yell over them. I sat still, folded my hands, and gestured toward the ceiling security cameras mounted all around the lobby. Every word you two are saying is being recorded on high-definition camera footage, time-stamped and stored permanently by this company. The dowry funds are premarital assets registered solely under my legal name, proven by bank statements I've already shared with management. No member of the Zhou family holds any legal claim to this money. Zhao waved off the cameras like they meant nothing, her temper spiking higher when she realized her victim act wasn't landing with the onlookers. She slammed her fist against the counter hard enough to rattle my contract papers. You married into our family. All your stuff belongs to us by right. You're selfish and unfilial for holding back money that should support my boy's marriage. Zhou Bin finally spoke up, his tone entitled and bitter. It's just 2 million. You make 6 figures every year consulting. You won't even miss it. Why do you have to ruin our future? This line unlocked the second layer of their collective motive, a detail I hadn't fully unpacked before. Zhou Bin didn't see the dowry as my hard-earned savings or my parents' lifelong gift to secure my future. He viewed my career income and premarital assets as a collective family pool, a resource owed to him by birth or simply because he was the younger son. Zhao had drilled this mindset into him since he was a teenager, constantly telling him the eldest brother's wife existed to fund his comfort. What shocked me most, the small reversal I hadn't anticipated, was Li Li's unscripted slip-up mid-rant. When the sales manager asked her if Zhao had ever mentioned the deposit contract and the non-refundable 100,000 yuan loss, Li Li blurted out the truth without thinking. Aunt Julia knew there was a deposit. She said Su Qing would cave and cancel the apartment if we made a big enough scene here, then hand all the 2 million over to us instead. Zhao's had snapped toward her fiancé so fast her hair whipped her cheek, eyes blazing with rage at the accidental confession. She'd gone to great lengths to hide the contract's existence from Zhoubin and Li Li, fully intending to risk their wedding plans just to seize my money, with zero care for the couple's own timeline. This was the third major plot reversal of the entire story arc. Zhao wasn't just trying to take my assets for her son's sake. She was willing to sabotage his wedding prospects entirely to satisfy her own obsession with controlling family finances. Zhoubin froze, staring at his mother in stunned silence. All the rosy promises of a free wedding apartment she'd fed him for months crumbled in a single careless sentence from his partner. He stepped back a pace, voice tight with betrayal. You knew buying this apartment would cost a non-refundable deposit, and you still dragged us here to cause trouble? You never planned to tell us we might lose our wedding housing entirely. Zhao stumbled to cover her tracks, waving a dismissive hand. It's just a small deposit. I thought we could talk the sales team into giving it back. 100,000 yuan is not small. I cut in calmly, sliding the contract copy across the counter for Zhoubin to read line by line. The clause states the deposit is forfeited unconditionally if the buyer voluntarily terminates the purchase before closing. If I backed out to hand you the dowry, that 100,000 vanishes permanently, and none of us get anything out of it. Zhou stood at the back of the crowd, watching his mother's scheme unravel completely, and for the first time since the honeymoon card theft, he stepped forward to speak against her. His voice shook, but he didn't back down. Mom, you lied to all of us. You didn't tell Ben or Li about the deposit. You didn't talk to Su Qing before stealing her bank card. You planned this whole scene without considering anyone's losses, but your own desire to control money. Zhao whipped around to glare at him, mouth twisting into a furious snarl. Now you're taking this outsider's side against your own mother? After everything I sacrificed raising you 2 boys. I'm not picking sides, Zhou replied, shoulders straightening, a quiet strength I'd never seen from him surfacing. I'm picking the truth. Your plans hurt everyone in this family, including me, Bin, Li Li, and Su Qing. Zhao's public victim performance collapsed instantly when her own eldest son refused to validate her lies. Several browsing clients pulled out their phones to record the confrontation, and the sales manager stepped between us to warn her formally that she was disrupting business operations. He gave her a single 5-minute window to leave voluntarily before he contacted local patrol police. Refusing to accept defeat, Zhao reached across the counter to grab the stack of my legal documents, intending to tear them up to destroy my proof of ownership. I moved the papers out of her reach 1 second before her fingers closed around them, and the security guard stationed by the entrance stepped forward to block her from advancing further toward me. Cornered with no more manipulative tricks left to deploy, Zhao burst into loud, fake sobs, collapsing onto a waiting lobby sofa and burying her face in her hands. Zhoubin and Li Li stood off to the side, arguing heatedly, Li Li furious that Zhao had hidden critical contract details that put their wedding housing at risk. The entire family unit fractured right there in front of strangers, every hidden lie and self-serving agenda exposed by their own unguarded words. I pulled out my phone and hit play on the recorded call I'd saved from Li Li 4 days prior, holding the speaker up so everyone within earshot could hear her original entitled demands about the dowry being reserved for their apartment. The audio captured every unfiltered, unscripted line, irrefutable proof their ambush today had been coordinated weeks in advance. Zhao lifted her head, tears drying instantly, her face hard with hatred. You recorded our private conversation? You planned all of this to humiliate me in public. I recorded it to preserve evidence of your pre-planned asset seizure. I corrected her, tone steady and unemotional. You chose to scheme behind my back, stage a public disturbance, and lie to your own children. Every consequence today stems from your own choices, not mine. After the 5-minute grace period expired, the sales manager dialed the community police station as promised. 2 uniformed officers arrived 10 minutes later, took statements from every staff member, reviewed the lobby camera footage, and pulled all of us aside one by one to record official witness accounts. When they read Zhao her formal verbal warning for public harassment and business disruption, her shoulders sagged completely, all her domineering energy draining away. The officers made it clear that any repeat disturbance at the agency, my workplace, or my residential complex would result in a written administrative record filed against her, alongside potential civil compensation claims for lost business revenue from the real estate firm. She signed the warning slip with a shaking pen, no more screaming or dramatic outbursts left in her. Once the police finished their paperwork and escorted Zhao, Zhoubin, and Li Li out of the building, Zhou stayed behind to speak with me privately by the agency's side exit. He looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed from watching his mother's deception destroy the family's reputation in public. I never realized how far she'd go to hold on to control over everyone's finances, he admitted, voice heavy with regret. I spent my whole life thinking her favoritism toward Ben was just harmless maternal affection, but today I saw she's willing to sacrifice his marriage, my marriage, and tens of thousands in cash just to get her way. I processed his confession quietly, my inner emotional shift complete. I'd spent weeks holding onto a tiny flicker of hope that he'd grow a backbone and stand with me, and today he'd finally broken free from his mother's decades-long psychological manipulation. But that small victory didn't erase the damage already done. The trust between us had been fractured too deeply to repair easily, and I couldn't pretend the months of harassment and premeditated asset theft had never happened. I appreciate you speaking the truth back there, I told him honestly, but your delayed opposition doesn't undo the weeks you stayed silent while your mother plotted to seize my $2 million dowry. I need space to sort out what this means for our marriage moving forward. He nodded, no argument or desperate pleas to make me change my mind. He understood the weight of his past inaction, and he didn't demand instant forgiveness. I returned to the sales counter to finalize my housing deposit supplementary paperwork, locking in the purchase contract under my sole premarital asset classification, fully insulated from any future claims from the Zhou family. Every document, bank record, audio clip, and lobby camera recording was organized into encrypted cloud folders, ironclad protection against any new schemes Zhao might attempt to launch later. As I walked back to my car after finishing all paperwork, I watched the four of them pile into a single sedan parked out front. Zhao sat silent in the passenger seat, refusing to acknowledge her youngest son and his fiancé in the back row, their heated argument still audible through the closed car windows. Her self-serving greed had split her own two sons apart, and the rift would not heal easily. I slipped into my driver's seat, set my phone to auto-backup all new evidence files, and pulled out onto the main road. I had no desire to destroy Zhao's family outright. My only consistent motive from day one had been defending my personal property and my own secure future. But every choice Zhao made to manipulate, lie, and stage public chaos only unraveled her own household's harmony, a natural psychological consequence of her obsession with controlling other people's wealth. The next phase of this conflict would not rely on screaming matches or public confrontations. I'd move forward with legal safeguards to fully separate my finances from the Zhou family's influence and force clear permanent boundaries that none of them could cross again. I'd barely cleared the police formalities at the real estate office and filed full asset legal separation documents with my attorney when my firm's HR director sent an urgent encrypted calendar invite marked confidential and priority executive review. At first, I thought the meeting was about my quarterly client risk portfolio, my core professional identity. After all, was a top-tier independent wealth consultant whose proprietary asset isolation framework was the firm's flagship service for high-net-worth female clients. I built this exclusive process over 7 years, designing step-by-step legal petitions to shield women's premarital wealth from predatory in-law families. Every partner and regional CEO relied on my proprietary training slides to onboard new advisors. That proprietary system was my irreplaceable professional core, mirroring the unique irreplaceable skill, rule from the 3 template core formulas. When I stepped into the glass executive boardroom 10 minutes ahead of the scheduled time, I spotted Zhao Shilian sitting stiff in the visitor's leather chair, flanked by the firm's youngest regional trainee manager, an inexperienced kid Zhou Ben had befriended through a casual part-time side gig. The 4th major plot reversal hit me instantly. Zhao hadn't limited her retaliation to private family harassment and public real estate scenes. She'd coordinated with this easily manipulated junior leader to stage a workplace smear campaign, planning to file a formal customer complaint claiming I'd pushed my own family financial disputes onto paying clients, tarnished my executive reputation, and forced the firm to suspend my core training contract, stripping me of professional income to pressure me into surrendering the $2 million dowry fund. Her motive was transparent. If she destroyed my career's revenue stream, I'd have no financial buffer to fight her legal property claims and would be forced to cave to her demands. HR director sat across from me, sliding a printed copy of her formal grievance across the table, her tone awkward and conflicted. The trainee supervisor accepted her unsubstantiated verbal claim without cross-verification. Per our policy, we're required to hold a neutral mediation hearing before any disciplinary action. Zhao states you've let personal marital conflict impact client consultations, and she's threatening to post anonymous workplace slander on our industry peer forums if we don't pause your flagship asset protection program indefinitely. I scanned the typed complaint in 30 seconds, every fabricated accusation paper thin, lacking a single client name, recorded consultation transcript, or email thread as supporting evidence. I folded my hands, calm and unrushed, the same clinical analytical mindset I brought to every billion-dollar wealth strategy session kicking in automatically. I'd anticipated Zhao would escalate beyond civilian harassment once her real estate public spectacle failed, but I hadn't predicted she'd weaponize my workplace as leverage. Yet her pattern of reckless, zero-consequence retaliation aligned perfectly with every prior tantrum and scheme. I pulled my encrypted work tablet from my bag, unlocked my client database archive, and projected 2 full years of recorded consultation calls, anonymized client feedback surveys, and quarterly revenue metrics onto the boardroom's large screen. Every female client I counsel on premarital asset separation submits post-service satisfaction ratings averaging 98.7%. 0 client has ever filed a complaint linking my personal family life to professional advice. The proprietary framework I created is the firm's highest margin service line. Pausing training would cut 42% of our regional high net worth annual revenue per last quarter's executive financial report you all reviewed. The junior trainee manager beside Zhao's face bleached pale. He'd only listened to her tearful, rehearsed sob story without fact-checking my track record, blinded by her fabricated claims of me being an unethical, family-obsessed advisor. Zhao cut in before HR could interject, raising her voice sharply in the familiar performative victim tone she deployed everywhere. They shouldn't let a woman who fights her own mother-in-law lead client wealth planning. What kind of example does that set for married female clients with in-law pressure? I locked eyes with her, cutting through her theatrical outrage with factual professional logic. No raised volume needed. My program exists specifically for married women targeted by greedy paternal/maternal relatives attempting to seize their premarital wealth. Over 117 of my long-term clients have sent written testimonials thanking this exact framework for shielding their life savings from family exploitation. If the firm suspends my work, we'll lose hundreds of retained client accounts and a multi-year corporate training contract with a national banking group that partners with us exclusively. The regional CEO, who'd remained silent in the back corner of the room this entire time, stood up abruptly and walked to the projection screen, scrolling through stacks of glowing client testimonials he personally recognized from industry conferences. He turned directly to the flustered young trainee manager, his tone firm and unyielding. You accepted an external civilian's unproven allegation without cross-referencing 7 years of verified performance data, nearly tanking our core revenue stream. Effective immediately, you're reassigned to entry-level admin support for a 6-month corrective training rotation. All client grievance intake authority is revoked until you complete compliance certification. The trainee's jaw dropped, utterly blindsided by the disciplinary consequence of his hasty, biased judgment call. Zhao watched in horror as her workplace ambush collapsed entirely. Her plan to sabotage my career had backfired catastrophically, harming the only insider ally she'd managed to recruit inside the firm. She scrambled to backtrack, stammering that she'd only come to talk peacefully and never intended to damage the company's operations, but the CEO waved off her hollow retractions. He shifted his full attention to me, sliding a revised exclusive partnership contract across the conference table, a set of bold new terms printed prominently at the top. We don't just want to reinstate your training program. We're doubling your executive base salary, granting full copyright ownership of all asset isolation curriculum you've developed, and launching a National Female Financial Defense Foundation under our corporate brand, led solely by you. This foundation will offer free legal and financial consultation to women facing in-law asset exploitation, exactly the conflict you've navigated personally. All operating funds are covered by the firm's annual CSR budget. No personal financial burden on your end. This was the critical fourth plot reversal that elevated the story beyond simple personal revenge, matching the become rulemaker sublimation beat from all 3 template story arcs. What Xiao had intended as a career-ending sabotage attempt had instead rewarded me with permanent professional autonomy and a platform to help thousands of women avoid the same dowry exploitation I'd endured. My core emotion in that moment was quiet, measured triumph, not rage toward Zhao, but a profound sense that my personal trauma had been reframed into systemic, industry-wide protection for vulnerable women. I signed the preliminary contract addendum right there on the boardroom table, then turned back to address Zhao one final time before security escorted her out of the executive floor per corporate trespass policy. Every grievance you filed, every public disturbance, every workplace smear attempt has been fully documented with audio, video, written witness statements, and bank evidence. My attorney has compiled a complete civil harassment case file, ready to submit to the district court the second you initiate any further disruption to my work, residence, or minor family contacts. If you choose to cease all retaliatory action permanently, we will drop all prospective legal claims against you and limit formal family separation to financial asset boundaries only. Zhao's confidence shattered completely. She'd never imagined her petty retaliation would trigger both severe professional consequences for her allied trainee and ironclad legal protection for me. She left the boardroom without another screaming retort, head hung low, escorted quietly by building security staff to the lobby exit. After the mediation hearing wrapped, Zhou Yong pulled into the firm's visitor parking lot 10 minutes later, waiting by the main entrance to speak with me. He'd witnessed the aftermath of Zhao's workplace scheme unfold via phone calls from his younger brother Zhoubin, and he'd spent the drive over drafting a full, voluntary financial separation agreement to hand over to me. He handed the printed legal document through my car window, every line clearly stipulating 0 joint claim to my $2 million premarital dowry, full waiver of any marital property rights to my real estate purchase, and a written commitment to permanently block his mother from contacting my workplace or a residential address. I've spoken with Ben and Li over the past 2 days, he said, voice steady, no more desperate pleas for compromise. They've broken off their engagement entirely after discovering Aunt Shilian concealed the deposit clause and intentionally sabotaged their wedding housing plans. Ben's moved out of the city to take an out-of-state factory shift to pay off his own personal debts, and he's cut all daily contact with our mother to escape her lifelong favoritism and manipulation. I've sat down with Dad as well. He's agreed to limit monthly basic living stipends to Zhao only and will no longer assist her with any schemes targeting your assets or career. I scanned the separation agreement thoroughly line by line, verifying every clause aligned with the legal protections I'd already established with my personal attorney. The document was fully notarized that same evening at the notary office we'd coordinated. No pressure, no ultimatums from my side. Zhou had voluntarily accepted every boundary I'd set after witnessing the full scope of his mother's destructive, self-sabotaging behavior across family and professional spheres. His character arc completed its full redemption turn, mirroring the redeemed secondary male character framework from Template 3's Gregor subplot. Once a passive, cowardly enabler of his mother's greed, he'd grown into a partner capable of upholding clear ethical boundaries and prioritizing our shared life over toxic family loyalty. I didn't rush to declare divorce immediately. The foundation leadership role demanded my full bandwidth over the next 6 months, and I chose to move into a separate private residential unit tied solely to my premarital dowry funds while we navigated a slow, intentional reset of our marital dynamic. Our relationship would only continue if he maintained consistent, zero-compromise boundaries with his birth family long-term, with monthly written check-ins with my attorney to confirm no new harassment incidents arose. Over the following 6 months, I split my schedule evenly between executive wealth consulting and running the firm's new female financial defense foundation. We hosted weekly free virtual workshops, brought in real estate lawyers and family law practitioners to offer pro bono consultations, and published a public digital guide detailing legal steps to shield premarital assets from predatory in-law demands. My personal $2 million dowry conflict was cited as the core real-world case study in every curriculum module, turning the humiliation of having my card stolen into educational, empowering content for thousands of women nationwide. Dozens of participants reached out each month to share stories of their own family asset exploitation, grateful for the structured legal and financial guardrails my program provided them. Zhao made no further attempts to harass me or disrupt my professional life after the workplace mediation and civil legal warning, stripped of her two primary allies, Zhou Bin and the junior trainee manager, with her eldest son enforcing strict distance. She had no remaining avenues to launch coordinated retaliation. Her power to manipulate others by staging public victimhood had been fully neutralized by hard legal evidence and corporate policy safeguards, and she was forced to live off only her limited pension plus the minimal monthly stipend Zhou's father provided, with no access to external financial pools to scheme over anymore. Half a year after the foundation officially launched, a formal request landed in my professional inbox via the foundation's scholarship portal, an application submitted by Lily, Zhou Bin's former fiancé. She'd witnessed our entire family conflict unfold firsthand, watched Zhao's greed destroy her planned marriage, and was applying for a fully funded female financial advocacy scholarship to complete a law degree focused on matrimonial asset protection. I approved her application personally. This final role reversal closed the full narrative circle of the story's core theme. The people once harmed by Zhao's patriarchal greed were now coming to my platform to build tools that would prevent identical exploitation for future generations. Zhou Yang maintained every written commitment in the separation agreement for 6 consecutive months. He visited my separate residence on pre-scheduled, low-key weekends only, never bringing up his mother's grievances or asking me to soften my asset boundaries, and consistently attended the foundation's public seminars alongside me to learn equitable family financial ethics from a neutral, third-party perspective. He'd fully shed the lifelong, mommy's boy conditioning that had blinded him to Zhao's harmful behavior, and our dynamic slowly rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect rather than one-sided compromise. The $2 million dowry apartment closed on schedule without a single last-minute disruption, fully registered under my sole individual legal ownership, all mortgage and down payment funds sourced exclusively from my premarital wealth. I converted one spare guest room in the new home into a private foundation remote work office, lined the shelves with client testimonial letters and legal case files from women we'd supported through our advocacy program. Standing in that home office one quiet evening, scrolling through foundation participant success stories, I reflected on the full chain of events starting the day Zhao stole my dowry bank card. I never set out to destroy my husband's family or seek petty revenge against my mother-in-law. Every legal, professional, and personal countermeasure I deployed was purely defensive, designed to protect my independent financial autonomy as a woman who'd built every asset through decades of professional labor. What began as a small, painful family dispute over stolen premarital wealth had evolved into a nationwide advocacy platform rewriting the rules around women's marital asset security. Exactly the transcend personal conflict to create systemic change, high-level sublimation required in all 3 core story templates. Zhao's greedy, power-hungry choices only dismantled her own family stability, while my calm, strategic, rule-based response turned personal suffering into lasting protection for countless other women trapped in identical in-law exploitation cycles. The story closed not with hatred or triumphant schadenfreude, but quiet, self-determined success and a lasting legacy of equitable family financial ethics I'd built entirely on my own terms.